your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and I have a very special guest with us who has written a book, a fascinating conversation we're going to have about right-sizing today. And I do have the title. It is Right-Sizing Today to Create Your Best Life Tomorrow. My very special guest is Marni Jameson. I wonder if there's any connection to the Irish whiskey Jameson, but
I
it's
wish.
great. It's great to have you with us.
It's nice to be here. I wish they were related, but they do spell it the right way.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I know a lot of people do, and we're going to talk about this whole concept called right sizing. What are you referring to in that regard? Because I know that we all have a lot of stuff. And I know it's not just about that, but there are some instances where when you're talking right sizing, in terms of, say, downsizing and so forth, sometimes we do that with people in our lives. I mean, there are divorces, and then there are philosophical divides. And so we say, I want nothing to do with you, and so forth. And their brother, sister, their husband, wife, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk about this. What do you mean by right sizing?
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I strongly believe that you should always be editing your life. And that means your stuff, the things you have, starting to purge and just really stop the clutter and just have what you need, use, and love. Also edit your house, where you live and how big a house you have and what is really fitting you and suiting you in the stage of life that you're currently in. If you still have your kid's Cub Scout uniform and his kids now have Cub Scout uniforms, you have a problem. We have to, learn how to evolve and yeah, edit your job. If life isn't working out and your friends aren't working out, your relationships aren't working out, and we have to continue. I believe right sizing involves a continual assessment and a reevaluation of everything that surrounds us so we can move forward and have our best life now.
Mm. Well, I'll tell you, I have over the years, one of the collections I started at a very young age was business cards. In 8th grade, when I graduated, they gave us all these cedar boxes with a little key and a lock. I mean, they weren't very big, just small little things. And I stuffed that things with business cards. And then I started putting them elsewhere and so forth. Now, I haven't done that for a long time because phone numbers change, names change, all of that changes. But I still have the ones that are I still have the cedar box with those cards. And I think about those going, okay, so what will you do with them? Now I have some ideas, but will I ever follow through on those ideas? I don't know. Books, same thing. I mean, interviewing you and others. PDFs work out real great because digital libraries don't get that big. But I have containers filled with books. So for the last 19 years, and some of the books in those containers go back 20, 30, and 40 years of interviews. And they're still in the containers. And I'm not going to read them again. It's nice to have. As I mentioned earlier, also, we do the same thing with relationships, in terms of downsizing. And there are a lot of reasons why we do that. My mother, of course, after her husband, my father passed away, when I was there for his memorial and what have you, she took me into their bedroom, into the closet, and said, go ahead and pick out some things that you might like of your father's. And I got a couple, three or four things, a belt with a belt buckle, his harmonica, his chess set. There's a vest I wear regularly to and from work. Those kinds of things that I would use, but would always remind me of him. And that was about it. I think I did get his shortwave radio too. But a lot of the stuff that we collect over the years that we're here on this planet ends up in the landfills, unless we've got people we can, who can inherit them from us and so forth. What is your process? What is it that you use when working with people to create our best life tomorrow? Where does one start?
Well, we talked before we started that I don't like to be considered the stuff police, but I
Hmm.
think stuff stands often, too much stuff stands in the way of us and where we could live, where we should live based on our life now. There are people that are in their last third of life, I'm going to say 55 plus, and their kids are finished school and they're out of the house, and the parents no longer commute to the jobs that they bought the house for in the first place because it was close to the kids' school and a good commute. And they're still in the house, the 4-bedroom house with the stuffed attic and the big yard that, used to have the Little League over for potlucks, and that doesn't happen anymore. And they're not going, they could be living a beautiful life on a golf course or by the ocean or in the mountains or in a cabin or in a townhome down in a city where they could walk to the theater. They could be living a fantastic life, and they're in the suburbs. And they're like, what do we, they don't want to deal with the attic and the garage, and oh, it's too much trouble. And the minute somebody says, oh, it's too much trouble, is when I feel a little tear forming. I just don't not go forward with your life because of your stuff. So I think I like to people to start with what is your motivation? And we're talking about downsizing your things, then we can graduate to your house. And not to say I want to live small or like a monk, but you have to think about it. So what is your motivation? Do you want to have your house is too cluttered and you won't entertain? You're missing out. You have a 2-car garage, you can't even park 1 car. That's a problem. You don't have any more room in the closet, and you just keep shoving stuff in, and if somebody opened the door, there could be a concussion. So what is it? Or you're sick of opening a drawer and having it look like a chicken lived in it. So what is your motivation? Do you want to open a closet and have empty space? Place extra room to bring things in. Do you want to be able to park your cars in the garage? You want to have friends over with pride. So figure out what your motivation is and then start chipping away at it. And I always say, it's emotional. Your books will be a problem. Your tools will be a problem, for you in particular, Richard. But I start in your linen closet, because I guarantee you're not going to get too emotional about your sheets and towels. And you say, okay, what do I need, use, and love in here? Why do I have, ratty towels? These are all I need. The other ones can go to the animal rescue. The sheets, you have a set in there that you never use because they're pilled, they're hot, they don't fit the mattress, whatever, but they're kind of new and you paid a lot for them, so you don't want to get rid of them. Well, that's not a reason to keep them. So you start to edit and cull. If you have 3 spatulas, pick the one you like the most. Don't keep all of them. So that's my process. Is I'm continually open a drawer, I prune and I let things go. And I have a box in the garage that I just put stuff in, and as it gets full, I take it out. Same, I have a bag in my closet. And you make it a lifestyle. And I think that really helps you keep the clutter under control and gives you the freedom to move forward. And we can talk about what to move forward to, but that's at least gives you the framework to come from.
Gives you a starting place. Would
Exactly.
would we when would we start using the word hoarder? Uh, and I bring this up because this happens on many levels. There's the physical stuff hoarder, all right. There is also the what I would consider the financial hoarder. This is not a negative slap to the billionaires, and or if there is a trillionaire now, I don't know, maybe, who uh, they have so much money that they would never spend it all in their lifetime, and yet they hold on to it. What good is it doing? And I'm not saying that they have to do anything with it, because I'm not, again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions. Just like you're not the stuff police, I'm not the money police in that respect. And I'm not talking about redistribution. But there seems to be a mindset, whether it's money, whether it's stuff, and in some instances, whether it's your physical well-being. I mean, it's hard for me to watch these programs where you've got people that are over 600 pounds. Now, they wouldn't be classified as flesh hoarders. Okay, there's a lot of psychological things going on there, but it just seems as though we are a country of excess. I'm curious, has this excess been exported to other countries? Are they, as far as you know, are they doing similar things, or do they have a different mindset? Maybe even one that you talk about here in your book regarding right sizing.
I think other countries, well, there are many of them aren't as economically prosperous, so they don't have as much, and they really don't even have to worry about too much. They don't have enough. And I think we need to be mindful of that as we try not to be wasteful. And I also think they're constrained by the size of their houses. I mean, nobody throws space around in Europe the way we do in America with the sizes of houses we have. So, I mean, you do definitely have some larger mansions and castles, but it's not like most people live pretty small in Europe and other parts of the world. So
Mhm.
that leaves them to not acquire so much. They're also better at buying quality and not quantity. So, a woman knows how to get a good quality black dress and she doesn't need 15, cheap fast fashion outfits. So those are the kinds of things that I think we can learn from.
Mhm.
So I also think that we need that mindset of more is just more, and there are definitely links between weight issues and also having clutter in your house. It kind of goes together.
Mhm.
And there are people that can when they start to get under control in their house, they start to get under control in their lives because both things are spinning out of control at once. And also there's a relationship to debt, not so much hoarding money, but to spending money. So all those things, when you can get financially under control, you can get your eating under control, and you can get your house under control, you're empowered to continue that momentum. So, and I've got psychologists, but I will say that hoarding and having clutter are not there's a line between the two. They're not the same. Hoarding is
Mhm.
a psychological disorder. There's a very deep underlying problem that needs to be managed psychologically and sometimes medically to help people relieve the anxiety that letting go of things causes. And that gets to be a pretty deep issue. Not to say average people like me gets a little difficult getting rid of my books or getting rid of dishes that I've got from my mom. But I actually, organizers hire organizers, by the way.
Mhm.
And I have had one come to my house and help me in my kitchen because I wanted to learn some things about just getting things under control. And I said, here are these beautiful Lennox dishes. They're, nice for the holidays. They were my mother's, but I never use them. I like these silver ones from Crate and Barrel that were about $5. I just think they're so much fun and I like them a lot more, but I can't get rid of the ones that were my mom. She said, so you love the ones from the Crate and Barrel and you use them, and you don't love the ones that were from your mom and you don't use them. Like, yeah. And when she said it back, I was like, easy to let go. Easy to let go. Sometimes you just need to have a person there objectively saying to you, you're not being logical here. Let it go.
Mhm.
Let it go.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things, and I write about these in my book, that you can do with your china. Um, first of all, ask if anybody wants it. It's not, there's not a market for it. So do not get your heart set on selling it and getting any kind of value for it at all. That won't happen unless it's a really rare and special kind of china. So some people, this sounds crazy, will break them into, smash them into pieces and make mosaic pots, ceramic pots, picture frames for a mirror. And it can be grandma's china rediscovered, reinvented, repurposed in a way that you'll enjoy because you're not really going to serve, you're not going to, I had a tea set from when I was in my 20s and I went to England. I loved it. And it was pink, it's Lady Carlisle tea set. And then I got married and my husband was like, what is this? And no self-respecting man is going to drink out of a pink teacup. Anyway, I found somebody who was just as, smitten, and I sold it for very little, but it was out of my life, and that's what matters. So rehome things as best you can. The tools, there's a market for those. Those actually do sell pretty well if you get them marketed properly and start to move things online as much as you can, but don't stand in the way. If you recognize that there's no market for something, just donate it.
We have a set of dishes, actually more than just dishes, plates and so forth. They are Balik. And the only reason we have them is because they were from Ireland, which is where we would like to spend the remainder of our lives. It's a beautiful country. We've been there twice trying to set up a third vacation there the end of 2025, hopefully. We had an appraiser come out to appraise them. And unless somebody is interested in buying them, they really have no value. I know that that's probably another method of either downsizing or right sizing is to bring in an appraiser to take a look at what you have and say, okay, you can create a vacuum in this space by getting rid of these dishes because somebody wants to buy them for $500 or $600 or what have you. So now they have the plates, you have the $500 or $600. You can now do other things and so on and so forth. But it has also been said that when we clear out space, it's sort of a metaphysical concept. When you clear out space, it makes room for other stuff. And that to me says we got to change the mindset. And by the way, that two-car garage analogy you talked about, my father would come out when we lived back in Phoenix, and we did have two cars, and we did have a two-car garage, and we did not park the cars in the garage because there was too much stuff. And he used to joke about that. He says, "I'll bet you the stuff that's in the garage that you can't park your cars in there because of is only a few $100s, and you've got a couple of $20,000 vehicles sitting outside the garage." I mean, he was just kind of pointing out the obvious in a humorous way.
So
Go ahead.
one of the books I wrote is called What to Do with Everything You Own to Leave the Legacy You Want. And the concept of that is, so what if you liquidate stuff? And you sort of talked about use the money to buy something else. So think about everything you own, whether it's while you're living or after, setting it up for afterward, and you put it through a giant funnel, put all the stuff you have, your books and your tools and your dishes and all that stuff, and it comes out as cash. And
Mhm.
there is a cash value. It won't be what you want it to be, but there are people out, liquidators, who will take care of this. And then you have that money and you convey it to your favorite university or your church or animal rescue or the environment or whatever women's shelter, whatever matters to you. You figure out it could be a community center. I talked to a fellow who started a dogwood tree botanical garden in his town because that's what his wife loves so much. Whatever it is, but create a legacy that will outlive you. And because all your stuff, I almost said something else, is not going to be meaningful. So boil it, figure, and if you have, and here's where it comes in, where a lot of times a family member will have something that is unique, valuable only to that person in their minds. Like It could be Pez dispensers. I don't know, something weird that they've been collecting. And you know what? They might have value, but nobody knows it. But the guy who's been, is weirdly collecting it in the corner. It could be Elvis Presley velvet paintings, whatever it is. There are collectors of these things.
Hmm.
And if you are a good steward of your things, you create in a will or in a document, you say, if I die, if I get hit by a meteor tomorrow, I know just the person who wants these Elvis Presley paintings. You're going to get top dollar for them, but you set it up or you sell it now and get the money and have it ready to convey either to your grandchildren or to a cause that you care about. But to create meaning out of all the things you have, to leave a legacy long after you live, is maybe the most important thing you can do. So,
No.
yeah, we have maybe children, maybe not. And some of them you don't think they're going to contribute that much anyway. So maybe we should be doing something more with our money. And I think there's something in that that's super profound about being able to liquidate everything you own, get the money. There, I love in my book, the What to Do with Everything You Own book, talk about a school teacher from the Ozarks. She was single, never married, spent her whole life teaching children, of course. And she had a house that was not worth very much, like $65,000. And she bequeathed it to the community center of the Ozarks. And upon her death, she said, I want the money from my house to go to pay for scholarships to help students from the Ozarks go to college. And a lot of these students are poor and disadvantaged. So when she died, they got her, sold her house for 65,000, and they grew that into $100,000 through their investment. And that particular endowment now spins off $2,000 a year in, maybe it's more than that, maybe it's 5,000 a year, into perpetuity in scholarships for kids. So long after she's gone, she's still helping kids get educated.
Mm.
And that is such a simple, pure example and that all of us can do. And you talk about these billionaires, but you don't have to be a billionaire to do it. And they
Hmm.
should be setting things up like this with meaningful legacy. So anyway, all your stuff can matter if
Hmm.
you are intentional about how to sell it and liquidate it and convey it.
We are talking with Marni Jameson. She's the author of Right Size Today to Create Your Best Life Tomorrow. Also, the author of Downsizing the Family Home. And we hope that you will go to her website, which, of course, is marnijameson.com. We will be linked to that website so people can find out more about the work that you are doing, Marni, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and we are talking about getting rid of stuff. That's one aspect of what we're talking about. But there's also another element of right sizing or downsizing. And I guess before we go to that question, I should ask you, what's the difference between right sizing and downsizing? And I think I know what downsizing is, but help.
Well, since your program's called Tell Me Your Story, I'll tell you my story. I have written 3 books on downsizing, and I started off after I cleared out my parents' home that they had lived in for 50 years, and that was a very daunting and sobering task and difficult. And I wrote Downsizing the Family Home and a workbook to help people get through it, sort of like a therapy tool. I was going through my own remodeling. I was leaving a long-term marriage, a 24-year marriage that wasn't working out. I moved from Colorado to Florida. I started becoming a live-in homestager, which meant I lived in nicer homes that were challenged, not selling, and they needed a little TLC, and I would decorate them and stage them with my furniture until they sold. And then I would do it again. And I lived in 6 houses in 4 years, which is a lot of packing and moving. And I purged a lot along the way. The best way to purge and get rid of your stuff is to move. If you move 6 times in 4 years, you're going to be really lean. And then I had the wonderful fortune to meet a lovely man who was a widower, and we got married 9 years ago. And so I had, of course, everything I had was perfect and edited and beautiful, and everyone would want my stuff. And then I looked at his, and his wife didn't take anything with her when she died, and he has had a house of, you know, full of stuff. And I'm like, oh, honey, I love you, but your stuff not so much. And we needed to work that out. And he was attached to a lot of things. And so I wrote Downsizing the Blended Home, when 2 houses become one, because Richard, when one house plus one house comes together, you need it to equal one house.
Mm-hmm.
So we each had to lose half a house. And so then I really became, I was getting very good at this downsizing business and with that book. And then I talked about what to do with everything you own when you get that to that final finish line to make sure everything hits the corner pocket. And this was depressing, right? Downsizing, getting rid of stuff, losing people, dying. I'm like, okay, I gotta tick this up. So then I thought, what are we talking about downsizing when really at this stage of life, we want to be in the perfect place for us right now. I'm looking at 50 plus, right? So once the kids are out and you paid that last tuition bill and you don't have to go into the job or you work from home or maybe you get to retire, you get to think about where do I want to be living where in what that is what kind of housing and with what quality items, household furnishings. And that is Right Size Today for your best life tomorrow, figuring out where to live, where the best place for you to thrive. And that
Mm-hmm.
is where is the best social, emotional, physical, and financial fit. And there are exercises to figure that out. And then in what? Is it a townhome? Do you want a yard for your dog? Do you want no yard? Do you want a pool? Do you want no pool? Do you want a high rise with a view? Do you want a walkout? Do you want to live in the mountains or by the beach or by the golf course or on a lake? It's your chance. This is your chance. So some people upsize 58, 50, over half of people who are 58 who buy a home, same size or upsize. So it's not just about getting smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say is really figuring out editing, evolving, knowing who you are, knowing what your future wants to be, or what you want your future to be, and making it happen.
It's interesting that you put it that way, because when one marries, whether it's the first time or however many times it is, you're doing just that, one house plus one house. And one of the ways that I have seen people really downsize or right size, if you will, is they change their lifestyle to the extent, and we've thought about this. My wife and I both thought about this. Buying an RV, buying a mobile home, not a travel, not a trailer that you put on a lot and take the wheels off. No, this is one that you could have a space, a home base, shall we say, where you hook up, and then there will be times when, you know what, let's take a trip, and you jump in that RV and off you go. Well, everything is going to be contained inside that RV, unless, of course, you're leaving behind at the home base a shed filled with stuff. Hopefully not. Or you are paying monthly payments on a storage unit. And there are a lot of them, aren't there? All over the country, aren't there? And to me, that
Oh,
would
don't get
be
me started.
okay. But that is one way because you can't carry a lot with you. You don't want to either because you're not just talking about the stuff, you're also talking about the weight. It takes more fuel to travel with more stuff, more weight, and so forth. And on and on and on. But I know there are people who have chosen to do that because they don't want a mortgage. They don't want a home. They don't want to deal with the maintenance in that regard. Uh, and they don't need that much room. And again, as you said earlier, there's this issue of, maybe you'll get a smaller place, maybe you'll get a larger place. It's all up to you. You choose. Um, do you find, well, let me back that up. What do you find in that way with the people that you work with? Are most people, again, over the age of 58 in that respects? I'm 65. My wife is 74. My mother lives in a townhouse in Phoenix all by herself, but my understanding is she's visited pretty regularly by the three remaining daughters and brothers and sons-in-law. They even told me at my was it my father's? It was either my sister's or yeah, it was my father's after my father's memorial. They came to me and said, "Don't worry about your mom. We will all be here to take care of them." And I told them, I said, "Okay, then instead of me having only one younger brother, I've got four other brothers, not in-laws, brothers." So I right-sized the family by saying, "You guys are not in-laws, you're brothers." All right. And when you're when you're working with people like that, are you noticing, is there a trend in that regard? Brick and mortar versus on wheels, or what? Whatever other alternate, maybe a boat. You want to live in a marina. If you live on the coastline, like here in Santa Barbara, I might buy a slip and buy a boat, and I'll live there on the water. Maybe what do they call them? Houseboat, and so on and so on and so on. What is it? Is there a trend?
Well, I don't know. I mean, most people want a single family home. That is the
Mhm.
trend, is most people, they're going to buy something, it's a single family home. But I love that people can visualize life on the road. And I wrote a blog recently about a woman, a young woman who's, took her life on the road, she and her dog, and they go everywhere they want. She visits her sons, and she that's her lifestyle. And she's a podcaster, and life is good. Houseboat, and I have relatives, my cousins live on a beautiful boat, and they live in a marina, and they love it. So, but here's the trick, Richard.
Mhm.
Your stuff needs to conform to your house.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't, you can't just mash it in. So if you're gonna live on a small place, if you want a tiny house, you have to be really, really good about what you put in it. And
Mhm.
then if you think of a way a ship is master crafted, and every little cubby is perfectly used, every hole, every little crevice is used for something useful. You need to be super tight with what you own and not just end up stuffing it with stuff. That's a miserable life. So you have to make sure that you get this place, and then you very slowly put the things in it that's only what you need and not anything else.
Mhm.
So that takes a special discipline. And I'm not sure everyone's cracked up to do that, but I'm all for it. I
Yeah.
think it could be really great. You started me on the storage unit thing.
Yeah.
You want to hear my storage unit rant?
Go for it.
So, okay, this is crazy. Our society, American culture is so heavy. They're such heavy consumers of stuff that they don't need, use, and love. Like if your dad put everything in the garage, if you have something in the garage, you don't need it, use it, or love it. That's just nuts. So get rid of it. Just liquidate it and sell it, and use the money to take you all on a vacation somewhere. But we in America have 53,000 storage facilities. These are big facilities filled with storage lockers and units that people rent. 53,000. That is more than all of the Starbucks, Subways, and McDonald's combined. Let that
Wow.
sink in.
Wow.
Over 90, it's 97% full. And the rest of the world only has 10,000 facilities. This is crazy. Americans have a problem, and they're spending on average $1,200 or $1,500 a month on stuff that I guarantee you isn't worth nearly that. So
Hmm.
it's really upsetting to me. So do not get a storage facility. And if you're going to be roaming the country, sell everything and then buy it again if you find that you're going to need a sofa or a hutch or a house that you would need a coffee table for. But don't pay to store, please. So if your stuff gets in the between you and stuff, you have to pay to insure it. You have to pay for the real estate it takes up. You have to pay for the stuff. You have to pay to move it. I mean, it is not worth it most of the time.
Yeah.
So,
When I moved out of my parents' house into my first apartment, I can't even remember how much stuff I had, but I didn't think I had that much. And I don't really think I did. And even when I moved into a slightly larger studio, which was in the same complex, again, it was all the same stuff that I'd moved out of my parents' house. However, when my second wife and my present wife, and I moved from Phoenix to Santa Barbara, a little side note, the moving company that came to move us was the same company, new name, that my wife's father owned in Santa Barbara. So there was sort of a legacy there that her father left, and they moved us here. But here's the kicker. They they charge you not by the truckload, but by how much it weighs. So in a manner of speaking, it is sort of the truckload. I was shocked Now, bear in mind, there was an upright piano in there. It cost me $5,000 because the weight in that cab over semi was 9,000 pounds of stuff. 9,000 pounds moved across the desert from Phoenix to Santa Barbara and then up the 154, which is the main road that brings people up and over and into the valley to San Ynez and so forth. Now, we had the money to pay. That wasn't the issue. What was shocking was how much it weighed. Now, if you remove a piano, which is pretty darn heavy, there was still a lot of stuff. I don't even know what the piano weighed, maybe 1,000 pounds. There's still 8,000 pounds. Now, yeah, there was some furniture there, and it still blows my mind. It still blows my mind. And we even bought one of, or not bought, we were going to rent one of those pods, that whole service, and fill it
Yeah.
ourselves. But as we were filling the first pod, which we thought we would only need one, we realized we're going to need another pod or two. And that's when we said, nope, we're going to call a moving company because then they'll come and they'll load the truck themselves and so forth. And people are moving all over the place. I mean, I don't know if there's even a pattern, a migratory pattern. I know there are a lot of people leaving California for Texas, Arizona, and I say more power to you if you want to live in Arizona. You like the heat, you can have my spot because I don't want it. But then, of course, you also take a look at weather conditions. And this is another element, I think, of this whole right sizing and downsizing that I'd like to talk about with you. But I want to remind our listeners we're talking with Marni Jameson, and she has written this wonderful book, Right Size Today to Create Your Best Life Tomorrow. And she's also written some other books as well on downsizing, and we hope that you'll stay with us as we continue talking with her here on Tell Me Your Story. I am Richard Dugan, and we are here talking about better utilization of the stuff we have and better utilization of whether or not we really need that thing that we think we should get. Uh, and then what to do with all of the stuff that we do have that we realize I don't love it, I don't need it, and I don't want it. And then what to do with it, which is a big deal. I wanted to ask you about natural disasters. They are Mother Nature's downsizer, and in some cases, right sizer. I think about not only Tornado Alley, and then we see the pictures on the news, and everything's just flat. No trees anywhere. There were no trees there in the first place, but now everything is just flattened. So now, and then you have the wildfires that were here in Los Angeles, and everything's just flattened. By the way, one of the images that I saw, which was really perplexing to me, it was like hard to wrap the old brain around. The house was in ashes. If they had a chimney or a fireplace, it was still standing because it was made of stone. But the grass along the roadway was still green. I mean, it was just so bizarre. But let's talk about this aspect. I mean, of somebody, and this is probably, and again, I know you're not a psychologist, but this is part of the equation. People in those particular areas or hurricane row or whatever they call it. And they lose everything because this hurricane or that hurricane wiped everything out with 140, 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds. They now are starting over. Is that a segment of our population that is in need of a mindset reset so as not to end up losing the things that they lost this first time or second or third, to where they better prepare, not for the disaster, but for the potential of the loss of the things that they do love, they do want, and they do want to keep. Is there a dynamic in there for us to talk about that you can talk about?
Well, I don't. My heart goes out to anyone who has watched their home be destroyed and everything in it. I can't imagine. It would be just heartbreaking. And I do have a high school friend from in Altadena who completely lost her home, and what survived were two plastic pink flamingos that she had in her front lawn. And she's like, "What the heck?" So she keeps those, and that has become kind of her symbol somehow. And these people, when I talk to them, they're remarkable in their resilience. So many of them are find the gratitude in how many people have come out to help them. And my friend has people who dig through the wreckage with her and try to find things that may be like jewelry, things that are just in the ashes. And she's always overcome by the people that have come out and just give her a hand. But I think that's very different. But I do also think that in a way, not that I'd wish that on anyone, these
No.
people have a fresher start. They go and they get just what they need, and they realize how little they do need and how important relationships are. And I think that when the bottom falls out from under you like that, that you grab onto the people who are lift you up. And for some people it's faith, and for some people it's family and friends, but you really find out what matters, and it's not your car or your clothes or your television.
Yeah.
um Not that these things aren't nice, but I do think it puts things in rapid perspective.
Yeah.
But most people don't lose everything in one fell swoop, and I do think that everyone could take a beat and look around them and figure out where there are things they're not using could serve a better purpose. We have an organization, my community in Florida, called the Mustard Seed, and families who've been, a lot of times it's women who have been, coming out of domestic violence situations, or and with children, if they can get themselves on their feet and they get an apartment, or they have to show that they have keys, but they don't have anything else, they can go through the Mustard Seed and furnish their house with the donated material. So I give my furniture that I don't need, lamps that I'm not partial to, um, housewares, other things, and I know that they're going to help people rebuild their lives, and that feels really good to me. I'm fortunate that I can maybe get another kitchen table at some, 20 years after I got one table and I'm just tired of it. And, maybe somebody else can use it, and I can move forward with something fresher for my lifestyle and evolving style.
Hmm.
So I do think that we can figure out ways. That's something I run into with people when they're trying to get rid of their stuff. They can say, okay, I can get rid of this, but it's important to me that it goes to a good home, or goes to people who value it, or it goes to people
Hmm.
who want it, or it's important. It doesn't just end up to your point, in the landfill. So that takes a little intention. There's a great organization, the Buy Nothing Project, that you sign up for as a Facebook group, and it's restricted to your community, but they're all over. And I got this new office chair a while ago. It's a little bit chic, I think. And I had this big old brown leather grandpa chair, and I'm dinky. I'm 5'2", and I was like Goldilocks. I had to put my feet on a box. It did not fit me. There's this big giant lumbering chair. It was for somebody much larger, but I was sitting in this chair for years. I'm like, why don't I get a chair that I like that fits me? Oh, because this one's expensive and it's leather and it's carved, but it didn't feel good. So I gave it, I put it out on my doorstep for the Buy Nothing Project, and a woman who said, "Oh my gosh, it's during COVID and she was trying to work from home and she thought it was so beautiful and it was going to really make a difference for her life." I'm like, have it, love
Hmm.
it, love that
Hmm.
it's going to a good place. So I think with a little intention, you can rehome your things into places where they can be of use, and you can live lighter and other people can live better.
It also points out in these kinds of situations that there is more than enough for everyone. When these disasters do strike, people come out of the woodwork with all kinds of stuff. I remember right after COVID and the lockdown was declared, restaurants across the country, and they focused in this one story on the some of them in New York and Manhattan. They had all this food. They didn't want it to go to waste. So they figured out a way that they could prepare it and then deliver it to people who were in need of it without having them come out and and so forth. Same thing with furniture, same thing with clothing, with the people who've lost everything in Los Angeles. I'm sure that the people here in this community of Santa Barbara and all the surrounding areas have donated all kinds of things that they really didn't need to hang on to, and that somebody else could get some use out of it before it completely wore out, that kind of thing. So it also shows there is no lack. There is an abundance in this country. And it seems to me that whether it's a natural disaster or I just want to downsize, Marnie, and it's okay to say the key word, help. And can they get in touch with you through your website, marnijameson.com, to get some help or at least get some direction, because they know they need to, but they really don't know where to start. And organizers and people such as yourself, you know where to start.
I'm happy to help. In fact, I've just started a new feature on my blog, which I do mostly weekly. It's Readers Ask section, and people say, hey, I had this woman, I've got this job opportunity. I'm not sure I'm going to like the job, but I got to move and try out for a few months. But should I sell all my stuff here? Or do I take it all with me, even if I don't love it? What do I do with my things when I'm living in a smaller place? Advice on that. And I fielded her question. And another older woman, she loved her mango trees. She and her 90-year-old husband, they made mango margaritas, and they didn't want to leave their house, but they were getting older. And I'm like, don't leave your mango trees. They said they had enough to bring in money to afford help. They lived in a 1,500 square foot house, wasn't really big. I'm like, don't move. Have somebody come and do your yard for you. So you're not having to trim the mango trees. Don't have your husband up there cutting, pruning the trees, but somebody else can take care of them and enjoy your house and your life. And, you're in the right place.
Mhm.
So I think it's really about figuring out what makes you tick, what makes you happy. You don't have to move, but you should think about it. Everyone should take a look around and go, is this the best house for me? Is it the right size? Is it the right affordability? Could I be doing better one way or the other? Is it near what I love? If it's family and friends. Now, some people want to move away from their family, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But there are it's up to you, but some people need to be close to art, and so like operas and theaters and good restaurants and whatever. So, but just gosh darn it, we only get this one shot. Live well wherever you want to live. Figure out how to get there, and don't let the stuff get in the way. The stuff is the last thing to worry about.
Now,
Get
Marnie has already said she is not a psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist. However, I want to ask you, when you assist and support and facilitate people in their right sizing and downsizing, and I'm sure that there's scientific evidence to support whatever the conclusion is, there's got to be a great psychological uplift in the individual or the family, a raising of the spirits that, oh, I feel renewed kind of thing, because I've got I don't feel so weighted down by all of that stuff, and on and on and on.
I've heard all of those things. I had one gentleman tell me, I just feel like I lost a lot of weight. Just had this dropped 50 pounds, just like felt like, and also just the freedom and the ability to, I can move now. I can go to Mexico and live in that place that I've always wanted to live. You're free now to move around, and the psychological relief is real. People feel clean. It's like a cleansing, and it's really, really a nice feeling. And I mean, I think it's important to, and I've never met anyone who had giver's up remorseness. I don't think
Hmm.
that's a word, but who look back and say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of ever." They're all like feeling so much better and lighter, and especially if they've gotten money for it, like cash,
Hmm.
or they've seen it go and help someone who was in need. Those are two really powerful tools. Like, golly, why do I have this lug of stuff when I could just have money in the bank or, money to do what I want to do with? So the liquidation factor is nice. It's freeing, and again, you can go buy something that is meaningful to you, or put it in a bank so it's meaningful in the future. And I just love the idea of helping others who, you don't even realize how good you have it sometimes until you see the people that you can help with your
Yeah.
gestures.
Well, a couple of thoughts have come to my mind as far as all of these books that I have been carrying around with me from Phoenix to Santa Barbara, and then also collecting in Santa Barbara. One option with the radio reading service that I went to work for at the age of 19, where they read newspapers, magazines, books, all kinds of periodicals. I even produced radio theater for them. And I'm thinking, well, they may have read a lot of these books already on the air. A lot of them may be available on Audible, and I'm noticing that YouTube is now popping up, it has been for some time, with books that people have recorded and put up as videos up on YouTube. But by the same token, who knows? Maybe they have a library that I could send these books to and say, hey, I want to donate these to Sun Sounds for the purpose of being read on the air. And they have really grown since I was there when they first started in 1979. I take great pride in being a part of the beginnings of that format that provides the printed word to those who don't have access. And when I moved to Santa Barbara, they had a recordings for the blind and dyslexic. And my first thought was, what? What does dyslexia have anything to do with? And then as I began to learn about dyslexia, I began to realize perfect fit. Absolutely should be for the blind and dyslexic because they're having difficulty decoding those characters on the page. And that was a wonderful thing. So that's just one option. Um, what are, let's say, the three, if there are three, there may be more, but if we can focus on one, two, or three main points, one, two, and three, that you want people to be aware of when they begin this process. Because here we are, early March, spring equinox is right around the corner, which means spring cleaning is right around the corner. And I'm serious about losing some weight, i.e., books. So, what would be the three main points that you want to get across to people? Your
I'm going to
message.
get there one second. I'm going to talk to you about books.
Okay.
And I write books. I have written 7 books. I'm a big fan of people buying books and having books, but let me put it to you this way. Let's look at once upon a time, people got daily newspapers,
Hmm.
okay? I'm a journalist, I come from that tradition. The paper, most of the time went into the trash by the end of the day, or at least by the end of the week, right? If it didn't line the bird cage, newspapers are trash. They're full of important words, full of things we don't get to read every bit of, things we think we should read, but we don't get to, or things that we've read and we're never going to read again. You can throw those out with ease. Most people don't have a big problem. Magazines are glorified newspapers.
Hmm.
They're a little harder to part with. They sit around a little longer. They're slicker, they're prettier, but they're the same thing. They're a glorified newspaper. And if it's 10 months old and you haven't read it, you're probably not going to. New Books are glorified magazines. These are publications that you read once, you don't read again. Just think of a book as a glorified newspaper. And you can throw away the newspaper and throw away a magazine. You can part with your books. So if you want to find that place that's going to take them, fantastic. But you know what? It's okay to get rid of them and take them to a Goodwill and let them figure out if there's a market for them or not. But you do not have to be the librarian. You do not have to be.
Right.
So I have purged many, 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 many books in my downsizing eras, and I continue to because they continue to come in. I'm in a book club. People send me books, to interior design books, and I'm constantly pushing them out. Okay, so where to start? So people want to say, help me out, Marni. first of all, you have to get the mindset of what is motivating you. Okay,
Hmm.
so again, you want to move, you want to downsize, you want to just have a freer house, less cluttered, you want to be proud of your home, all those things. Figure out what's motivating you and stick to it. You want to open your drawer and be proud of it. And I always think about, the woman told me, I'm getting my drawers in dying order. What if you get hit by a meteor and somebody comes in and opens your drawer, especially mine, because I'm such a bragger about being so organized, right? And if my drawers are a mess, how's that going to look? So opening, making sure everything is super buttoned up, right? There's that. So then you think of all the excuses, but it was expensive, but so and so gave it to me, but I might need it someday, but I wore it to such and such an occasion, but maybe if I lose 10 pounds, I'll be able to get back into it. None of these is a reason to keep anything. The only reason to keep anything is if you need it, use it, love it. So be ruthless. And the other thing is let space be your guide. That's another really great one. I have a shelf that I like purses. I'm sure you don't have a shelf full of purses, Richard,
No.
but I have a shelf full of purses that I like. And I have a rule that if there's no more room on that shelf. If I get a new purse, one goes. One goes, because I'm not going to have, you cannot control your space. You can control your stuff. So if you have a shelf that's for purses and that's all you get, you
Mhm.
stick with it. So I like to let space be your guide. And that is a big thing that like move managers help people if they're moving into a smaller place. Let's say they had a big shelf for glasses, drinking glasses, right? They have a big shelf for those, but they're moving to a place that only has this much room for glasses. Well, you can count. You can fit 8 glasses. You cannot fit 24. So figure out which 8 you want because this is how much space you have. So really be mathematical about what you're doing. And I
Mm.
also think there's one more sort of psychological concept that I think is important to people, and that is to understand what psychologists call endowment, the theory of endowment. So everything that you have, the shirt you're wearing, the vest you said was your father's,
Mhm.
things that, and everything you touch is endowed with meaning because it's not neutral anymore. You remember why you got it, where you wore it, who complimented you when you wore it, who was a gift for someone. Things change. Like if you buy a purse when you're in a vacation in Santa Barbara and you just remember that vacation and it just starts to have meaning. Just like a little child has a security blanket or a teddy bear that they're glom onto and instead of their mom or dad, it's a security object. They endow that blanket or that teddy bear with a lot of meaning that it really doesn't have, but we've all seen that attachment. It's to replace mom or dad when they're busy in the kitchen or in the garage.
Mm.
We do that to our things. That endowment of endowing items with security and meaning never leaves us. We just get more sophisticated about it. Like if I lost my wedding ring, I would be nauseated. I would be crestfallen because it just means so much to me because my marriage means so much to me. And for some men, if their car gets us, anything happens to their car, heaven forbid, right? So
Mhm.
we get attached to stuff and that attachment is real and it starts at a very young age, but it's still stuff. And if we understand that these underpinning, that holding onto a blanket is really a pretty flimsy scaffolding for if you thinking if that's your security, that's kind of how stuff is. Stuff is not security for us any more than that blanket can replace a parent. So understanding the underpinnings of attachment theory and endowment kind of help you go, it's just stuff. I'm just being silly. I'm just being sentimental. I'm getting overly attached and I should know better. That
Mm.
helps at all. But it helps me.
One other rule that I've heard, and correct me if it's not, so you shouldn't use this as a determining factor. You have a box. It's up in the top of the closet. You haven't opened it for a year or more. You pull it down. Do you open it or do you just get rid of the whole box sight unseen?
I think I'd open it. You saved it for a reason, and it might be, I know. I told you I'm not the stuff police,
I know, I
but
know.
I also don't believe that if you haven't worn something in a year, you should toss it. That's one of the rules people have. Like if you haven't worn something in a year, you're obviously, and that's not true. I mean, I might have a Christmas dress that I wear every 5 years. It doesn't I'm not buying a new one every year. So I think that is a bad rule. But I would look at it, but I would really tell myself, look, if I haven't dealt with any of this stuff in a year and I haven't wanted to find it, I probably can live without it. But just in case you want to look in there and find out what it
Yeah.
is.
You just never know what you may have stuffed in there that you just forgot you'd stuffed in there that was maybe very valuable. Maybe not sentimental value, but actually literally monetary value. And you could turn that into something that could really be used for some fun stuff, maybe. We're talking here about right sizing as well as downsizing. Here with our very special guest, Marni Jameson, marnijameson.com will be linked to that website. And you folks are listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we've been talking with Marni Jameson, and her book, her latest, I should say, has to do with Right Size Today to create your best life tomorrow. And I got to tell you, I don't like waiting for spring to be sprung to start to clean things out. My office, my studio here, it has gathered a lot of stuff. And I need to, and believe it or not, I've got 3 containers behind me that are filled with stuff that I need to I either put out in the shed, at least for the time being, and make room in here. Okay. I have reel-to-reels, boxes and boxes of reel-to-reels that I keep telling myself, I'm going to transfer those to the computer eventually. And I have a reel-to-reel right next to me over here that I just have not hooked up yet. I've got my turntable hooked up, ready to transfer my albums to the digital world. So it's one of those things where, okay, now it's time to manage oneself and time, budgeting that and going through those processes. And you kind of sparked that in me to begin that process. So I hope people will go to your website. Once again, it is marnijameson.com. Will be linked to get yourself a copy. Are your books in Audible format yet?
Oh yeah, I have several. I've read one of them. I read Rightsize Today and Your Best Life to Create Your Best Life Tomorrow. I do the voice narration on that one. The other ones other actors have. And yes, they are available in that format.
Wonderful. Well, I will. I have. I'm a member of Audible, and I have credits that I get each month. So I may look your book up and take a listen to it because it'll maybe give me some helpful hints on how to go through that process of, as I like to call it, spring cleaning or decluttering or right sizing. I mean, and maybe pass on some of the stuff that I've got here. And quite honestly, I mean, I remember when we left Phoenix, I went to this one bookstore, used bookstore, and even though it was only pennies on the dollar, there were hundreds and hundreds of books, and they bought them all. So I had a few $100s in my pocket for something else. I haven't found that yet here in the Santa Barbara area. But if someone's listening, would be interested in buying, heck, I might even put a whole bunch of them in one of these big old crates that I've got, and I'll say $100 for the crate, whatever's in it, book wise, and just
Oh,
just saying bye bye. I'd still go through it just to make sure that there weren't some old books that I had collected that were given to me that do have that meaning, but most of them are, those do not resale books that PR firms send out to have a look at. I want to thank you so much for sharing with us, giving us so much time here on the program, and helping us to understand better the difference between right sizing and downsizing, and beginning that process for whatever the reason is. Thank you so much.
well, thank you for having me and for your interest and live well. You're on your way, I can tell.
Absolutely. Well, I do have 3 final questions I ask all of my guests. I will ask those of you in just a moment, but first I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. And we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. Our podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. And we're on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will subscribe, not for the purposes of boosting up my numbers. I'm not as concerned about that as just getting the information out, but so that you can click notifications so that when I post a new conversation, you'll be notified. A reminder that my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life, is available on Amazon in a hardcover, paperback, and Kindle, with Audible soon to be released. And we also ask if you can help us out financially. We'd be gratefully appreciated. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And on the homepage of richarddugan.com, there are links to both the Amazon and the PayPal links to the book and to help support the work that we're doing. And finally, we didn't get into this, Marni, but we encourage people during the decade of perfect vision, to spend some time going within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listening to that still, small voice. And I would venture, Marni, that if we were to do that, we would get a lot of the guidance on keep it, get rid of it, keep it, give it to da da da. We'd get some guidance in that regard. Or at the very least, as we're going through the process that you have outlined here in Right Size Today, to create your best life tomorrow, we would at least be given some reassurance, some support, some insight, inspiration, if you will, knowing that, hey, you're on the right track. Just keep moving forward. So, with all of that being said, we now go to our 3 final questions, and they are: number 1, who is Marni Jameson?
My, what am I? Oh my, well, I'm a mom, first of all, of 2 wonderful kids and 3 great stepkids and 6 grandkids and a wife and a sister. And one's a daughter, but I always feel like a daughter because my parents are in my heart no matter what. And a
Mm,
journalist and a columnist and a author, I
mm,
guess, and dog lover.
mm.
That's it. Francophile. How about that?
There you go. What gets you up in the morning?
My coffee. My husband brings it to me every day. He can hear when I open the drapes and let the dogs out, and he's always up ahead of me, and he gets the coffee going, and that's what gets me up in the morning. And then most days I start with doing some kind of exercise. I swim, I cycle, and I go to yoga. So I
Mm,
try to start every day with some movement because that helps my brain.
very good. And finally, what was your best day?
Oh, I was 16, my birthday, and I was ahead in school. My mom pushed me ahead in school because for a number of reasons, but everyone was driving but me, and I was so ready for my driver's license. And I was a junior in high school, and I was like finally getting my driver's license. And my dad took me, and I passed my test. I remember what I was wearing, and we started to go home, and he goes, "Oh, I need to make one stop for business." And I'm like, "Oh, I just want to drive in the car by myself. Do we need to stop?" Yes. And we got out, and he had a present for me, which was a brand new Shetland sheepdog puppy. That was
Oh,
mine for my 16th birthday. I could almost cry. So yes, I got a puppy and a driver's license with my dad all on the same day.
oh,
Best
wonderful.
day.
Wonderful. Once again, Marni, thank you for being with us here and Tell Me Your Story and helping us to move forward and make this world a better place, even if it's just in our place, for a better tomorrow and a wonderful time. Best life, as it says in your title, tomorrow. Thank you again for joining us, and I thank you for tuning in and listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, the video cast, love Talal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be part of your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.